I know it's actually on the bottom of every episode, but even though we have lawyers, I don't know who reads the fine print. I wonder how many people realize that you're the one who composed our intro music.
I tell everyone that all the time. So that's how I introduce myself to people. In fact, I have the theme music travel with me. Cocktail parties, when I walk into a room. It's great. I'm Hal Marcus.
And I'm Memme Onwudiwe.
And this is Meeting of the Minds, the legal AI podcast from Evisort.
We interview lawyers, professors, and legal operations pioneers that are pushing the envelope.
Leaders using technology to drive great business outcomes and shape the future of the profession. Memme, happy almost year end.
Yeah, it's been a great one.
We relaunched Meeting of the Minds in 2024. I've been so gratified at the response that we've been getting on this podcast.
Yeah, a lot of my role involves traveling to different cities and meeting lots of folks in the legal technology, overall innovation space. And, it's been heartwarming to hear some of the feedback from our podcast.
Yeah, thanks to everyone that's been listening and subscribing and contacting us about this. We really appreciate it. And the guests that we've had, just such great conversations. We have been getting into how AI is changing the practice of legal in both good and challenging ways, the importance of data cleansing and managing your data really carefully.
We also talked about data privacy, regulations, how to address them. We talked about the importance of data privacy beyond regulations and why contract language is getting more precise and focused every day.
We talked about strategies for better adoption of legal technology and why some people fear legal technology. We've talked about how legal interacts or sometimes struggles to with business teams like procurement and finance and HR.
Yeah, we've had lots of advice from people building their careers in legal operations and data management. I mean, we've accomplished a lot of what we wanted to do this year, I think you'd say.
We did, but there's one thing actually I did not accomplish this year. So in our trailer, I said that dad jokes was going to be an important part of this podcast. And I don't know that I fully fulfilled on that. So I'm feeling compelled right now to try to make up for it in one fell swoop. You good with me?
Please.
All right, here we go. This is a joke I first heard about economists. I think it translates even better to lawyers. So let's try it out. A chemist, a physicist, and a lawyer are stranded on a desert island. I've got you already, I can tell. All they have on the island to eat are cans of beans. Those are their only provisions. They don't have a way to get into the cans. So they got to figure out a strategy for this. So the chemist says, you know what, I've got it. I'll go around the island. I'll collect bits and pieces of herbs, plants, etc. I'll mix them together into an acidic solution. I'll spread that on the top of the cans. It'll leak through the cans. We'll get into the cans. And the other two say, well, wait a minute, then we're going to have poison beans. We won't be able to eat them. That's no good. We need a better solution. So they think some more. And the physicist says, I've got it. I'm going to grab dry leaves and sticks and kindling. I'll get a couple of rocks together. I'll start a spark. I'll get a fire going. I'll put the cans over the fire. Pressure will build up in the cans. Cans will explode. We'll get into the beans. The other two say, we're going to have beans all over the island. We need a better solution. So they think some more. The lawyer says, I've got it. I've got the most elegant solution of all. May it please the island. Assume arguendo a can opener.
Oh, wow. Well, we kept our promise, and that's what the core of contracts are. So I'm happy that we did that from that perspective. But no,
and from no other perspective, I can tell. All right, let's launch in. We did 8 episodes this year with key leaders in the legal technology space with a range of different roles. We are going to run through those episodes, and we are going to listen to some clips, and we're going to talk about what was learned and what we really found interesting in those episodes. So, Memme, you kick off our first one.
Definitely. So we're kicking things off with Jen McCarran. For those who don't know, she's the president of Clock and spoke a lot about her experience leading legal operations at Netflix, a global organization. When we talked about her theory and concept of legal ops 3.0 and the importance of storytelling when it comes to legal operations leaders, and really where she sees the space of legal operations going, especially from her unique vantage point as the president of the Corporate Legal Operations Consortium, or CLOC, which is the largest organization in that space. I'd love for everyone just to hear a clip from that where she really dives into the role of legal operations from the perspective of its role in crafting data for the business to ingest.
Some of you may know I'm obsessed with narrative. I kept saying to myself when I saw the Evisort dataset size come out, like, well, now what and so what? And who's going to make the stories come out of it, tie different bundles of data together with folks from legal asking the questions, with folks from the CFO's office or the accountant's office asking the questions that help them run the business better? Someone has to sit there and craft all of that with these data points. And who is that going to be? I think it should be us.
I love that clip. That is why Jen McCarran is so fun to listen to when she's up on stage speaking at CLOC events, because she looks very big picture, right? At the role of legal ops, not for its own sake. She looks at legal ops as, how does this contribute to the business? How does this contribute to creative storytelling? How does, what's the point of why we're doing this in the first place? And it's more than let's make contracts get closed faster. It's more than let's eliminate a bit of tedium. She's thinking much bigger, and I really enjoy that about her.
I love that. And her energy and passion always shines through when she speaks. And that's an important part of storytelling, which is why she's such a great storyteller too, and advocate. It all just goes. So yeah, that was a great one.
And at the same time that we launched that episode with Jen McCarran, the same day, we actually posted another episode with the outgoing CLOC president at the time, Mike Haven. Mike is a lawyer. He was global head of legal operations at Intel at the time. And amazing timing, it was just announced today that he's taking over global legal operations at Meta. Mike had been president of CLOC for 2 years prior to that. He also goes back to Sun Microsystems, where some core group of real impressive leaders in this space really got their start and kind of was, in some ways, the birth of legal operations. We talked about the evolution of legal operations. We also looked forward quite a lot, the impact of AI on the industry, how adoption is going, contract processes, and how much they can change in the future. And we talked about his work on the Sense Collective, which is a group of executives looking at these really kind of transformational changes in legal technology.
Yeah, no, this was an exciting episode. I mean, one part that was near and dear to my heart is that it's so far the only time we've dove deep into blockchain and smart contracts and their potential use in legal departments in our show so far. So definitely worth a listen.
Yeah, and that gets us to the clip that I selected for this one. Let's play it now.
We have centralized a team that consists of one representative from every organization in legal, trade, and government affairs. So every team has a representative on this AI team, this centralized AI team. And each of those representatives also has their own team in their organization that's focused on this, that experiments and reports to our team, the centralized team. So what we're doing is we're getting everybody involved, is the bottom line. We're trying to get everybody involved early in the experiments, in the overall process for how we intake AI requests, AI solution requests, and how we get them approved so that everybody's in line that this is a safe solution to deploy. We're getting everybody involved so that they can own it too.
Wow. Excellent clip. There's so many companies these days where they're all trying to set up AI committees and groups looking at artificial intelligence, and the framework that he just laid out in a way where you're able to make sure your teams and everyone is involved and everyone's able to have that space to experiment and to report up and see what's working is truly a best practice I've seen doing some of this. So I'm happy you could choose that clip and kind of isolate some of those learnings for folks.
Yeah, Mike's got a very practical approach to adoption. At the same time, he's looking very far ahead. And I think that combination is really a recipe for success. So always great to talk to him about these things.
Indeed. And when we talk about unique approaches and thoughts in innovating law and some of these practices, we really go to episode number 3, which is with Scott Westfall, who's the professor of practice and also the faculty director of the executive education at Harvard Law School. And Our conversation with Scott was an interesting one. We dove into the impact of generative AI on the legal profession, but really looking at it from the perspective of some of the other skills that lawyers are going to need to develop in this new world, like empathy and business acumen and persuasion. And we also dove into more broad issues in the legal profession around how difficult or easy it is for folks to embrace new technologies like AI.
It's a funny coincidence. When I was choosing that clip from Mike Haven, I almost went with a clip where he was talking about the importance of legal education, embracing AI, and getting legal leaders ready for the next generation because it's shifting so much. And then as it happens, we put out an episode right after that with one of the leaders in the country on making sure that that happens at your alma mater at Harvard.
Indeed. Scott is an incredible orator when it comes to these issues and has really identified, I think, some things in that legal profession level that other folks feel every day, but haven't been able to articulate into words. But without further ado, let's go to the clip.
If I were doubling down as a law student now, I would be looking at the human skills, building out my negotiation, empathy, listening, design, creative skills, team skills, and my business knowledge, finance, valuation, accounting, strategy, business skills. So I understand what the client is actually trying to achieve at a better level than AI would, and I can be integrating that. And prompt engineering and understanding how to work with tech and building out use cases, studying all of them. That's where value is going to be added.
That's a great summary of what anyone entering the field needs to be focused on when AI is now such an important part of the picture and becoming a bigger part of the picture, right? It's partially about embracing the AI, using all the tools to do everything you can do better, faster, more effectively, more accurately. But it's also about, I love the way you put it, staying a step ahead, because the AI is there to provide the information to empower human decision-making and action, rather than to replace it. And the more of a knowledge base you have about the broader business needs and the goals of what you're doing, back to Jen McCarran, legal ops not for its own sake, legal ops there to support the business. The more of a sense you have of the business and what its needs are, the more you're going to be able to contribute to that in a legal role.
Indeed. And it's important skills. I mean, as you think about entering this workforce, if you have AI that's able to get a perfect score on the bar exam, maybe that's not the specific factor folks are going to rank their applicants on. Maybe they're going to be looking at these other skills where the AI is not going to be able to jump in as readily.
And that brings us to episode 4, released in July with Connie Brenton. Now, Connie Brenton's a legend in the legal operations space. She's a legal ops leader who's worked with major corporations, including NetApp. She's part of that Sun Microsystems core team that came up through the ranks. And she is the co-founder of LegalOps.com. We released this episode shortly before her annual conference with LegalOps.com. We talked about the history of legal operations as a role, how it's evolved, and advice on how to embrace the latest changes, make a career in this industry, how you should approach the community, all of that.
Yeah, the work that Connie's done in community building at Clock and at LegalOps.com is really just incredible, because so much of this innovation is only really passed on if there's forums for folks to communicate and pass on these best practices. And so developing those environments, while difficult, is so important.
So let's go to the clip that I selected.
You can't turn off AI because there is some risk. It's not going away. And it's important to get involved with the community and understand the technology early so that you can develop a foundation upon which you can grow as the maturity of AI continues to grow. This also is where you've got to tap into your community. And the community involves everybody in the ecosystem. It's your providers, it's your law firms, it's your in-house colleagues and constituents, it's everybody, because a lot of the real knowledge sits with the providers who have been working on creating solutions for a number of years now, and they're already ahead. So don't be shy about asking your provider to come in and do a full-on educational thought leadership program for your legal departments.
Wow. Connie is full of so much wisdom. And she's completely correct. I mean, to her point, us on the vendor side, not only are we building these technologies regularly, something else I'll even add there is I personally go to legal ops conferences almost once a month, if not more. And I'm hearing so many sessions of best practices that folks have about how to display value and things from that perspective. And so changing that relationship where you can lean on your vendor for some advice in the same way that I think legal departments have relationships with law firms where they might ask for some advice and trainings as times as perks of that relationship. I think bringing that onto the technology vendor side is a really prescient advice and I think great selection.
Connie's legalops.com organization has events throughout the year, so we encourage people to check them out.
Moving to episode 5, we spoke with Carol Hopperton, who gave us a lot of great insights from her experience leading legal operations at Vonage, who was acquired by Ericsson, but also from throughout her legal career. I mean, we speak all the time about how legal operations today has developed naturally over the last decade or so. And her career is a prime example of that. While she's had so many roles with different titles that if you look today would be under that legal operations bucket that just didn't exist in the past.
Yeah, what's interesting in talking to Carol is you're saying her legal career, she doesn't have a legal background per se in the traditional sense, but she has emerged through all of these roles into a legal chief of staff position, which is very much dependent on a range of skills, might not be your traditional legal skills. And it's a really fascinating career to explore. And she was just great to talk to.
That's so important. And it shows in her quote, just that more kind of practical and efficient view on things and really helping to support the delivery of legal services in an effective manner. So let's listen.
Don't get complacent. Just keep going back, keep going around, keep checking that even as you've implemented it, that it is being seen as adding value. And also, I think one of the biggest challenges is making sure things are maintained. So there's often a lot of focus in implementing technology. So you could implement simplistically a contract workflow. You can implement it. You can go away. Nobody manages to tell you that the whole contract template's changed. You don't know. So again, you've got to just start to think end to end. Implement, maintain, back around and figure out a process that's going to engage in all of that and make it successful.
That was really fun to hear again. I sometimes think I should start the day listening to Carol like a motivational speaker to set your course for the day on what to focus on, because so often we hear about something that got implemented, right? A new model, a new workflow, and people are excited about that. And Carol's world is, how is it working? Is it being adopted? Is it being updated, optimized, maintained? What are the results you're getting? Let's see the metrics. Let's see the results. So yeah, really great to talk to her about this.
Indeed. And I mean, and to that point, even if your needs haven't changed, sometimes the technology's changed. I mean, you got to think before generative AI, I'm sure a lot of tools that you had didn't have certain experiences and capabilities that they have now. But if you're not keeping up to date with that, you might be missing on some value. So definitely great wisdom from Carol.
That is a really important point. From the time we started this just in May to now in December, the capabilities of the generative AI have advanced so much that this is a constantly moving and evolving story. And speaking of constantly moving and evolving stories, we moved into September with our episode 6 interviewing Harold Wu. Now, this was a bit of a departure for us, our first non-legal interview really in any way, shape, or form. Harold is the Chief Procurement Officer of T. Rowe Price. And a user of Evisort, he had been in T. Rowe Price for over 5 years and had a track record of saving $20 to $40 million per year. We had a great conversation with him about the primary drivers for procurement and how they're regularly changing. It used to be all about savings and risk, but now it's also about friction and velocity as key factors as well.
Yeah, it was such an important conversation because as much as we like to talk about contracts as lawyers and feel that we own them, the value is really felt throughout the organization and a lot of times primarily in places like procurement and finance. And so getting his perspective was incredible.
So I chose a clip from Harold I'm going to play for you right now.
To tell the business that you cannot or should not engage this supplier or do this service because we don't have the right contractual terms in place, I'd be thrown out of the room. right? You just have to find ways to move at the speed of business. So it's friction and velocity. So there's still a focus on savings. There's still a focus on risk mitigation, but there's a very strong overlay to reduce friction and increase velocity.
Excellent. Absolutely excellent. I mean, the way that Harold is able to balance the issues of saving those costs. You talked about he's saving 20 to 40 million a year and doing very well at that, but also needing to move quicker with the business. An issue that I think a lot of lawyers feel and deal with a lot too, and have been accused of not being able to do when it comes to moving at the speed of business.
Never lawyers accused of holding things up.
Exactly.
Shocked I am.
But just to see how central it is to how he sees his role in the business is important. And another incredible perspective on these same issues on contracting. But as you can tell, sometimes people feel different ways about different parts of that aspect.
Yeah, Harold had some great commentary about the silos that emerge between procurement teams and legal teams and how they're not necessarily intertwined. And that was proven out, I won't tell the story, but proven out on how they were looking at adopting contract AI technology. It's played out perfectly there to exemplify that. And the end result was to be able to derive information from their contracts that could feed into procurement, both accelerating the business and also helping drive decision-making. So it was a really interesting conversation.
Indeed. And it got us into October, where we didn't fall lightly back directly into the same legal technology lane that you might have been accustomed to. We actually spoke with Emily LaCroix, who's the Global Data Protection Officer at Berkshire Hathaway Specialty Insurance. And we always love talking with folks in spaces like insurance because although we often talk about the value of data and information and documents and contracts, et cetera, when in an industry like insurance, where the actual business is driven by documents, and that's almost what you're selling, promises on obligations in agreements, then you can really feel the importance of some of this data. And it was really good talking with her with that context.
Yeah, Emily's had such an interesting career evolving from a more traditional legal kind of role into more of a product focus and data privacy focus for this organization. And as you're saying, contracts are really their product because of the nature of what they do. So she's got to look at it from multiple angles, and she can look at AI both from the perspective of the benefits they're gaining from leveraging it, but also as a risk factor for those that they're insuring and things that they have to underwrite. So really interesting perspectives from Emily.
Yeah, well, let's listen to it.
I also sit on the AI steering committee for my company. We kind of have this freedom to let's explore what makes sense as use cases. People who in like ops and IT are really, really excited to, run with proofs of concept. And I'm sitting here like, guys, put on the brakes. We need governance. We need data governance. We need information governance. We need AI governance. How are we going to make these decisions, right? When people come to us and ask for an exception to whatever our policy is, how are we going to make those decisions?
Yeah, and there it is. Emily is at the same time an AI enthusiast that's getting all this benefit from deriving information from her contracts, and she's helping to drive that initiative. Simultaneously, she's participating in looking at the risk of AI across a wide range of use cases and telling everyone, guys, we got to have the right protocols in place. Those two things can coexist. And I think that that's a really interesting microcosm of what's been happening in legal over the last year. We are seeing lawyers be simultaneously pressured to adopt AI for their own use cases to support the business and to make legal happen faster and more effectively, while they are also tasked with setting the policies for AI adoption in safe and responsible ways across all the different teams, what you can and can't do. And I think that's just a fascinating juxtaposition that we've seen in the legal industry.
Yeah. And I mean, I've seen the folks be most effective in that dual role when they take it as an opportunity to leverage some of these technologies to do their jobs better. But by doing that, they're better understanding those technologies to advise internally around it at the same time, too.
Exactly. They get acquainted with what it is that they need to advise everyone else on. And that's important. And speaking of things that are important, let's segue to our final episode that we're going to recount today with Debbie Reynolds, the data diva. So Debbie is someone that we've both known for a long time. She is an advisor, a consultant who's worked with so many major law firms and is the host of a popular podcast called The Data Diva Talks Data Privacy. And we talked about the connective tissue among different data privacy laws, how you can approach multiple laws at once with a good core strategy, the importance of getting your data cleansed, both for safety and regulatory compliance, but also to ensure you get better results from your use of AI.
Indeed. No, it was a really great conversation. And I think when a lot of people in law talk about AI, their first thought goes to data security and data privacy and such, especially with some of the horror stories folks have heard about because of the early use of ChatGPT by some corporations. And so I think bringing in Debbie to talk about some of those issues with her expertise was really great.
All right, here's the clip that I picked for Debbie's episode.
So back in the big data days, companies were like, oh, big data is great. So we collect all this data. Now they have all this junk that they can't really do anything with, and it creates more risk. And unfortunately, a lot of them now, they're trying to throw a lot of this junk into AI. And it's like, you just can't throw junk into AI and then think you're going to get a diamond out the end. So it has to be really good data that you get in. I say, instead of garbage in, garbage out, I say garbage in, junkyard out. Because AI has the capability to really create just a volume of data, like way more than what you put in. So it's not like a one-for-one type of exchange.
That is so prescient from Debbie. I mean, Eversort even was built on the idea that you need to structure unstructured data with the focus on invoices, business documents, contracts, etc. Getting that structured data and taking it out of just PDFs or that kind of mess of data that she's talking about is really important if you do want to leverage more advanced generative AI tools, right? And so we all hear about hallucinations happening when there's generative AI. And it's because generative AI is really good at guessing what the next word should be. But if it doesn't have that structured data and context under it, that's where those issues can arise, right? And so really important points there by Debbie.
Yeah, this became a really big theme in 2024, didn't it? Because this is the year that legal started to, and users in general, I think, started to get a better, not ideal yet, understanding of generative AI and what its capabilities are, what its limitations are. And one of the factors in those limitations is it really comes down to the use case. If you're using the generative AI to reach out to a broad data set like the internet at large and come back to you with an answer, well, the potential for hallucination is there because it's basing it on information that is not validated and tested and trusted. When you're using it for an internal use case based on your own data, and that data has been ingested, cleansed, put into structure using more traditional tools like traditional AI, natural language processing that extracts and analyzes data really well and creates structured data points, well, then you have the foundation that can help validate the answers that generative AI is giving. It's part of the source that's delivering those answers. And that's what's known as retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. And that's a term that it's not new this year, but it started popping up in our circles this year with a broader understanding of why that is so important for the use cases that you're putting into place.
Wow. And I guess that is all the episodes that we've done in 2024. Time flies when you're having fun. That both goes for us doing these shows this year and also for today's episode. And what a year it has been. There's one thing we haven't touched upon, and some in the audience may know this already and wonder why we haven't brought it up yet. And others might be wondering what's Memme on about right now. But the announcements that Eversort has been acquired. We have a new corporate home, and it's with Workday.
What? No one told me about this. I missed the meeting. Oh, wait, that explains why I'm in the Workday offices right now with a working pass.
Yes, that would explain it. And Workday, I mean, they've been a customer for years. I actually, fun fact, accepted an award on behalf of them earlier this year for best use of AI in a legal department, which is just a little Easter egg.
Did you tell them about that, or did you just show up and accept the award?
Much like you in that office. But this is actually really the culmination of the vision we've had at Eversort from day one. As many as you know, I'm part of the founding team of Eversort. This is something we started back in 2016 as Harvard Law students and data scientists from MIT. And really our goal from day one was making and creating a world where when you have contracts, invoices, business documents with such valuable information that drive your business, we want to make sure that you can track and keep track of that without having to meticulously, manually type all that information from every single document, right? And of course, when looking at contracts, these are typically governed and housed within legal, but the impact of the information in contracts, that spreads throughout the organization. And so working with a global organization like Workday that has deep connections in finance and HR and other business units, really bringing the data and these documents to life, we couldn't be happier. And our whole founding team, and really our whole company, is coming over and becoming workmates, part of this company.
Yep, we're all really excited for what 2025 is going to bring for Eversort and our new parent company. And let's just take a moment here to reflect and say thank you again to everyone that's been listening and subscribing and giving us feedback on this podcast. We hope it became part of your essential listening. Looking forward to a lot more of this. And Memme, how do we wrap things up today?
You know, it's funny because I was just on my soapbox about how the value in data and contracts is important to the entire organization. It reminds me that the first sound of our first episode, if you want to go back and listen to it, is Jen McCarran really telling everyone the same exact thing, and how legal's role with the contracts is to pass on that value to the rest of the organization. So I think it might be fun to end this podcast with the way we started it.
And without further ado, Jen McCarran.
What if it all starts now with this data and making meaning of it to accelerate the business, to light up the CFO's eyes when they hear that what we can do with accelerating deal velocity and changing how much revenue you can bring in a year? I mean, that's an exciting point.
Meeting of the Minds, the Legal AI podcast, is brought to you by Eversort. To learn more about Eversort and how we can help you contract better with AI, visit Eversort, EVISORT.com.
You can find Meeting of the Minds on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever else you listen to podcasts. Don't forget to click subscribe so you won't miss future episodes.
On behalf of everyone here at Eversort, thanks for tuning in.